Hello YouTube, welcome back for another episode of Telling Stories. Today, we're going to take a look at Ernest Cline's 2011 instant classic, Ready Player One. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. Spoiler alert, it's going to get a really good grade. So sit back, relax, I'm Andrew Crabtree, and this is Telling Stories. Welcome back! We are here for episode number 2 of Telling Stories, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about one of my favorite stories of all time, Ready Player One. It was really important to me to go ahead and do this review early in my channel because I wanted to get this particular book review in before the movie Ready Player One comes out March 30th later this year. Now, I'm not necessarily one of those people that's a book purist that won't watch the movie or thinks the book is always better than the movie, but I do think it's really interesting how books make into scripts for movie. I think sometimes it's done really well and sometimes it's done poorly, and I'm excited to see how Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg compares to the book. That said, I do think it's really important if you're watching this and you haven't read Ready Player One to go ahead and read it before the movie comes out, so that way you're able to compare the book and the film adaptation. More importantly, if you're watching this and you haven't read Ready Player One, what are you waiting for? And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the first section of my review, characters. Now, if you watched last week's episode, you heard me tell you that the characters are the most important part of any story, and I still stand by that. But I actually think that the characters might be the weakest part of Ready Player One. And that's really hard for me to say because to nitpick one of your favorite books is really hard, and it's going to be really difficult for me to say anything bad about this book because I love it so much. But if I'm being completely honest with myself and with Ernest Cline, I think that our protagonist, Wade Watts, might be the weakest link in this entire story. Now, don't hear me say that I dislike the character of Wade Watts. I was absolutely empathetic and connected to Wade's character through the entire story. I kept reading page after page to make sure that Wade was going to be okay or that Wade was going to win, but I just don't think he's the dynamic type of character that you come to expect in a story like this. I think that Wade's a little too steady, a little too introverted, and I don't necessarily think he just jumps off the page. That said, I think that some of those elements feed into the plot and the type of person that Wade is, but I just don't think it necessarily makes for as dynamic of a character as we want. That said, I didn't dislike the character, I just thought he was just good enough to keep us really interested. Now, if we flip the page and look at our antagonist or our villain, I think that Cline knocked it out of the park with the Sixers and Nolan Sorrento. I really think that the Sixers, who I think were very cleverly named, as a collective form this really amazing bad guy. It's kind of the idea of this group of sellouts that are these gunters turned mercenaries, and I just really disliked them, and I think if you're watching this and you've read the book, you probably did too. Now, if we look at the top of this Sixer army in this IOI corporation, we see Nolan Sorrento, who is a really bad dude who jumps off the pages as somebody that you really want to dislike. As a reader, it is very important to you to see the Gunters overcome IOI and beat this negative force. Moving on to secondary characters, I think they were really well done. I think that H is probably my favorite. I really liked H's character. I don't think I quite loved Artemis as much as other people did. I thought that she was okay. I thought that sometimes she could get a little negative and, quite frankly, a little bitchy. But on the whole, I thought that her and Wade's kind of romantic entanglement was interesting, and it kind of kept me page turning. I really liked the idea of this high five, this kind of elite group of Gunters that kind of, band together. I thought that was really cool. So wrapping up characters, I thought that they were good, but I do think that it was the weakest part of this book. So for my score, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Moving on to our plot. This is where things get really exciting for me. I thought that this plot was extremely well done, and it's probably my second favorite element of this entire book. I thought it was just incredibly creative and original, the idea of this Easter egg hidden in this entire massive world of the Oasis. I think it's really easy to kind of entangle yourself with the Gunters and see yourself, what would you do in this situation? And I just thought that this idea of searching for the egg presented this really nice arc. I thought that Cline did a really good job of introducing rising and falling action and a lot of conflict on our way up our story arc to this epic climax. The climax at this battle at Anorak's castle I thought was perfect. There was great action, great give and take between the characters to lead up to the climax. And then I also thought that the way that we came down off the climax and into the book at the conclusion was just really masterfully done and masterfully told by Cline. So for the plot, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. So bringing us to element number 3, cultural relevancy. I think this is another area where Cline hits an absolute home run, kind of taking a deeper look at this idea of our digital life versus our real life, and kind of the blur and the kind of the gray area that exists between those and the bleed over between those. I think that it's really an important issue in our society right now where we look at people that live completely different lives online versus real life. I think that it was really interesting how he kind of looked at that. And then Wade's journey through kind of his self-image in the real life and him losing weight and getting in shape in the real life and kind of maintaining his body while he was in the Oasis. It was really interesting for me to read and follow Wade's journey through this. And I think that honestly it's something that in our society is a bigger deal than we make it out to be. And it doesn't actually get addressed directly enough, in my opinion. So giving a point value to cultural relevancy, I'm going to go with another 10 out of 10. Moving on, entertainment value. Again, love this book. Every aspect of this book was a page turner to me. I literally couldn't get through it fast enough, and then when I did, I immediately flipped back to the beginning of the book and reread it again, which to me is kind of the definition of entertainment value. I loved this book probably even more the second time I read it, so if you've only read it once, go back, give it another read. I guarantee you will pick up on some things that you didn't pick up on the first time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time beating up on this because, as you can tell, I absolutely loved the book. I thought that it was masterfully composed, so very clearly entertainment value to me is another 10 out of 10. Alright, moving on to our 5th criteria of setting. To me, this was my favorite element of the entire book. When we look at these 5 elements that I think make up for a terrific narrative, I think that Cline absolutely crushed setting. So this book is set in a dystopian 2044, which to me has the potential to be a little bit cliche or overdone, but when you actually mix in the element of this oasis being an escape from this dystopian reality, it's amazing. And the oasis itself is fantastic. It's a world that Cline built for himself where literally anything is possible. And yet, at the same time, it's believable. It's a world where Artemis and Parzival can be dancing in zero gravity in the air in a club or driving a DeLorean, and yet it makes sense and you don't even question it. So I think that the setting was just beautiful. I could picture myself in the Oasis. I found myself wishing that the Oasis was an actual thing. So Ernest Cline, well done. Setting, an outstanding 10 out of 10. So that brings our running total up to a 48 out of 50, which is an A grade. I wouldn't have had it any other way. This book is fantastic. I think that you should absolutely pick it up, flip through the pages, and I guarantee you will read it as fast as I did. If you have read it, go back and read it again. Brush up on it before that movie comes out. I think you're going to find that there's a lot of things that you can pick up on, and then you'll also be ready to kind of compare that to the film. I'll be doing another video when the film comes out, reviewing the film and then comparing the book to the film. I'm super excited that Steven Spielberg attached himself to that project, and I think that it's going to be really, really well done. Now, before you go, let's take a look at a bonus round, because I just can't get enough of this book. If you haven't listened to the audiobook for Ready Player One, it's actually narrated by Will Wheaton, who was actually mentioned in the story and is a child star of the 80s, which I think is super cool. Will Wheaton does an amazing job reading the audiobook. So if you haven't listened to the audiobook, download it, find it on Audible, iTunes, just check it out. It's really good. It's worth your time. All right, well, that wraps us up on another episode of Telling Stories. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check back next week where I'm going to do a little segment on whether I like ebooks or paper copies. And I'd really love to hear your feedback on that as well. So check back on that. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do. It literally means the world to me. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you're having as much fun with this as I am. I'm Andrew Crabtree, and this has been Telling Stories.